Star-Spangled Banner yet wave. Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Good afternoon. I'm Beth Hillman, President and CEO of the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. It's my honor to welcome you today as we pay tribute to the innocent people killed and the more than 1,000 people who were injured in the first terrorist attack on the World Trade Center 30 years ago today. At the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, it's both our duty and privilege to preserve the history of this tragic event, to pay tribute to those individuals who perished, stand in solidarity and shared grief with the families and friends of those people, recognize the endurance of those who survived, and honor the brave people who risked their own lives to save others. It's as important as ever that we continue to tell a complete narrative of this deadly attack. Since 1993, it's continued to shape our world, and it remains imperative that future generations are able to come here to learn the stories of loss, survival, and hope, as well as the lesson we learned from that day. On this milestone 30th anniversary, we remain steadfast in our promise to never forget. I want to acknowledge and welcome members of the Memorial and Museum's Board of Directors, elected officials, and distinguished guests who are in attendance today. Thank you all for gathering with us on this somber anniversary here at the Memorial's North Pool. I'd like to invite Senator Schumer to say a few words. We thank him for his leadership and ongoing support of institutions, including ours, ensuring that we were not left behind during the pandemic recovery and laying the groundwork to be able to safely host a gathering as we are here today. The senior senator from New York and the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here to mark 30 years since that fateful day in February when terrorists, vicious, brutal terrorists, struck the World Trade Center and killed 6 innocent people and 1 unborn child. Today we honor John DiGiovanni, Bob Kirkpatrick, Stephen Knapp, Bill Macco, Wilfredo Mercado, Monica Rodriguez-Smith, who was 7 months pregnant, and the over 1,000 who were injured in this brutal attack. Now I come here not only as the Majority Leader of the United States Senate, but as a lifelong New Yorker, a husband, a brother, a father, a grandfather. February 26th shook our sense of security here in New York. And of course, though we didn't know it at the time, the bombing presaged a much deadlier attack 8 years later, whose date, September 11, has become shorthand for a major inflection point in American history. But that doesn't make what happened here 30 years ago on February the 26th any less important, any less tragic, any less worth remembering. In Judaism, It is said that the taking of a single life is akin to the destruction of the world. Many lives, many worlds were transformed forever on February the 26th. But in that same spirit, remembering the dead, as we are doing here today, is a sacred act of healing, repair, and hope for the future. A lot can happen in 30 years, but the pain of losing a loved one never disappears. My father, Abe, World War II vet, passed away in November of 2021. I miss him every day. He taught me and my siblings so much growing up. He's still here today. Those of you who've lost parents who are close to know what I mean. He's still here with me. And he taught me two lessons that stuck with me the most. One, always help people. My dad often said that the most noble thing you can ever do is helping people. I've tried to do that, including here today, in public office. But the second thing my dad taught me is to never give up. He told me if you're doing something that's important, search your heart. Know what you're doing is right. And then persist and persist and persist, and God will reward you, and you will succeed. That is exactly what the loved ones here today of the victims of February 26th have done in advocating for greater recognition that day. Despite the hole in their hearts, they are lighting candles by remembering. And thanks to their efforts, we were able to include the victims in the and their families in the Victim Compensation Fund, at first resisted by some. Thanks to their efforts, the careful and thoughtful work of the people running the September 11th Museum and Memorial, the victims of February 26 have a permanent place of remembrance and memorial here. The millions of visitors who visit these hallowed grounds and enter the museum can learn the names of the victims and the full story of what happened here. As ever, I will do everything I can to support, as Majority Leader, to support the mission of the September 11th Museum. In fact, we were just able to secure a $700,000 earmark in the budget to help the museum retrofit power and lighting and make these peaceful pools more effective. And I will close, and I will continue to work closely with the victims' families and the Memorial Museum to help in every way I can. Let me close with one final thought. On February 26th, after September 11th, after the Wall Street crash, after Superstorm Sandy, after the pandemic, every time people have questioned if Lower Manhattan will retain its vibrancy, its resiliency, its spirit. Looking around this morning, I think the answer to that is clear. Just like the memory of the 6 people who were tragically killed 30 years ago, the unique spirit of New York lives on, stronger than ever. In honor of those we have lost, let us continue living fearlessly in their memory.
Thank you, Senator Schumer. I'm also honored that we have Governor Hochul with us today. In many ways, the governor has helped to ensure the legacy of this site and the people who responded here. She's been a constant presence here at the 9/11 Memorial, an instrumental partner in our relationship with the state. The governor of the state of New York, Kathy Hochul.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Beth, for being the keeper of the flame here. This beautiful site, a tranquil site, a site for people from around the world to come and know the stories. I thank you for your leadership and continued commitment to this hallowed ground. I also want to acknowledge, yes, our Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer. He's ever present. I thank him for being such a great partner of mine. and my other partner, Mayor Eric Adams, for being such an incredible leader of this city. I also want to recognize the past and present leadership of the Port Authority. It's still as if it was yesterday when you speak to them what happened on this site. But most of all, this is about the families, the friends, how that hole in your heart can never be filled even after a generation. And what does 30 years mean? Babies born 30 years ago are now having their own babies. That's the passage of time. But I'm sure for those of you who still have that empty chair at the dinner table, that time stands still, you still have that loss. And I just want to tell you, we grieve along with you. Words that I can give will never heal the scars, the pain, but just know that the memory of your loved one will never, ever dissipate. It is something we in New York will always ensure that the memory is never lost. But 30 years ago today, more than a bomb exploded beneath this ground. Terrorists tried to explode hate and to create a dynamic to shake up our psyche, our sense of security that we had had up until that time. A site that was targeted, 50,000 people working in this complex, they sought to do massive, massive harm. They may have thought they were attacking a building. It seemed like a building was what was the target. But they also launched attack on our democracy, our institutions, our symbols of success, and ultimately the American people. And in that time, we lost some of the best of us, good people, people that were just going about doing their business. Monica Smith, a first-generation immigrant who was here living the American dream, who worked tirelessly to build a better life so that she and her unborn baby could live something that people around the world aspire to. John Giovanni, a passionate Mets fan. He would have been so excited this year to see what they had achieved. He had such a zest for life like only a New Yorker can achieve. Robert Kirkpatrick was known for fixing anything, always quick to lend a helping hand. He was a good man. William Macko served our nation in the armed forces, came back, as did Stephen Knapp. They knew what it was meant to sacrifice. They were willing to put on a uniform to protect people they didn't even know that was their call to duty. And between working 2 jobs to provide for his family and get an education, Wilfredo Mercado rarely had a day off. He too experienced sacrifice to live a better life. 30 years ago, we lost some of the best of us, and their memory endures. But we also saw the best in each other. Those who came to this site, yes, our first responders are there. God bless them. They're always there to protect us and help us when times and unspeakable times occur. But at that time, it reminded us that no one asked the first responders or those who stepped up where they worshiped or what country they came from or which political party they belonged to. We, in that moment, were united as Americans to stand in resolve against terrorism wherever it rears its ugly head, whether it be here in the homeland or abroad. And that is our commitment to the people of this state. We'll continue with that sense of resolve, that we will always stand to defend our democracy. Always, always, always. And that is the message that those who look to do us harm from around the world should take to heart. Because this is New York, this is America, and we always rise up. God bless New York State, and God bless the people of the great United States of America. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Governor Hochul. Next, I'd like to introduce someone who's been an immediate and committed partner to the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. As a first responder on 9/11, Mayor Adams understands the significance and solemnity of the 1993 attack on the World Trade Center, and we're so glad he could join us today. The 110th Mayor of New York City, Eric Adams.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the words from the governor of the state of New York. As I think about the family members who are here, I remember not only that day as a member of the New York City Police Department, but I remember on September 11th, I remember holding my breath when I heard that we lost our fellow officers and firefighters and those who were inside the building. I recall not until speaking with my family and learning that my brother, who was a sergeant at the time, he was able to survive responding, but at the same time, that holding of the breath did not bring about any relief because we lost so many. But I'm clear when I hear our national anthem being brought forth by the police officer who stood here. The red glare of bomb bursting in the air gave proof through the night that our flag is still here. Our flag will continue to be here. If it's due to the historical attacks on Pearl Harbor, if it's the first attack here, if it's a 9/11 attack, those bombs are not only physical bombs, but they're also the emotional bombs that come with some of the terror that we face every day. The resiliency of this country, of this nation, that was communicated through the words of the governor and the senator is a real reflection of who we are. But also, what the governor laid out were the names of the family members we lost. Hidden inside those names are small vignettes, small stories. A young person who's an immigrant that wanted to find and pursue the American dream, a person that loves the sports that we hold on to so much, one who worked several jobs to move forward in life, a businessman, a mother who is holding a child with an expectation to allow that child to participate in our dream. Something special about this country. I say over and over again, it's the only country on the globe where dream is attached to its name. There is only an American dream. And because of that, many peoples have the tendency to harm us because of that dream. We will never allow that dream to fail. I spent 22 years of my life wearing a bulletproof vest, standing on the street corners of this city, protecting the children of this city. It does not matter what my role is. I would join and continue to join the men and women of this city as we hold on and protect the American dream. New York was attacked because we are the symbol of that dream. This is America's city, and we will continue to lift up that dream, no matter what harm we are facing. And to the family members, your loved ones will always be in our hearts, as far too many that have experienced the devastation of terrorism and terror. We will continue to lift you up in prayer. And I join the words of the governor. God bless the city. God bless the state. God bless our country. God bless our dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Adams. I'd be remiss if I did not also thank New York City Police Commissioner Sewell for being with us today. Thank you for your ongoing support. I'd also like to recognize Rick Cotton, the Executive Director of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, who is here today as well. I'd like to welcome and invite Stan Brezenoff, who was serving as the Executive Director of the Port Authority on February 26, 1993, to join us and say a few words. The Port Authority and its staff have been stalwart leaders at this site and champions of rebuilding and renewal. Their dedication to remembrance and their demonstration of resilience have been models for all of us. Mr. Brezenoff.
Majority Leader Schumer, Governor Hochul, Mayor Adams. 30 years ago, I was among those who trudged down the steps uncertain of what had caused a sure disaster, and to learn when we hit the bottom of the Trade Center what had transpired, and to begin to learn the horrendous fact that lives had been lost and hundreds of people had been hurt. Today, 30 years later, we still feel the impact of that event, the grief we hold for the ones we lost. We feel and share the hurt that the families have felt these many years. That will not change even years into the future. There was another casualty, though, or an attempt at a casualty in that event. They were after the World Trade Center. They were after what the World Trade Center represented. They were after the city of New York and the state of New York. They were after the American people. And soon after that event, Governor Cuomo, my Governor Cuomo, you've had another one since my Governor Cuomo, said to me that we cannot allow, Stan, the World Trade Center to stand as a relic, a wreck, a ruin, as a reminder of what these, my words, not his, SOBs did. And I told him that we knew that. We knew that it was very, very critical that we not allow one extra second for them to gloat or to point to a World Trade Center out of commission. And we dedicated ourselves at that moment, and I speak of the we as the Port Authority workforce and our private sector partners, under the leadership of Charlie Maikish, who is here. We bent every effort, worked 24/7, and reopened the World Trade Center in the middle of March. It was an effort of Americans coming together to show that we would not be kept down, even as we felt the enormous hurt and grief of what had occurred and the people who were lost and hurt, even as we understood that there was a bigger picture. Somehow it all boiled down to what we could do, and what we could do was to take away their trophy. And I salute the people at the Port Authority and their private sector partners for what was accomplished in a time that no one believed possible. Yes, the grief is hard, the grief is real, it hurts. But so too is that triumph. And it's important for us as New Yorkers and Americans to remember what was achieved in the immediate aftermath of the bombing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brezenoff. I'd also like to thank the FDNY Commissioner, Laura Kavanaugh, for joining us today. We're grateful you could be here, too. On February 26, 1993, Charlie Maikish was director of the World Trade Center Department at the Port Authority. Following the bombing, he was the senior executive in charge of recovery and reconstruction at this site. We are always honored to have Charlie with us for this day of commemoration. Mr. Charlie Maikish.
Thank you, Senator, Governor, Mayor, and my boss, Stan. 30 years, it's never easy. But I want to talk to you about the lessons we learned and what we did so that we can pay tribute to those that passed and died that day. They indeed truly were heroes. At the time of the bombing, in 1993, the Trade Center was an open complex. It was open and freely accessible, like most commercial office complexes in this city and in this world. We were a free, open society, and we had not experienced a foreign terrorist attack. This was the first that we experienced that. At 12:18 on that day in 1993, at a place just 200 feet from here and 20 feet down, terrorists exploded a 1,500-pound bomb, which effectively disemboweled the Trade Center. It took out all of its operating systems. It took out its communication, its fire alarm. It took out its power. We learned at that point that we were dealing with a situation in which people were coming down darkened, smoke-filled fire staircases where we could not communicate with them. We could not advise them of what they were coming down into. We had no ability to do that at the time. The systems were gone. The bombing was a wake-up call. We now know from experience and from best practices that safety sits upon really a three-pronged stool. First of all is the ability to obtain intelligence, and then secondly, to develop a swift and effective response and restoration and recovery. Immediately after the attack, we at the Port Authority installed and established, under Stan's guidance and tutelage, I might add, new security protocols and new fire life safety practices, which quickly became the industry standard, not only across the city, but across the nation. We no longer did fire drills where people just came into the corridor and were told what to do if there were a fire. We did evacuation drills where people actually evacuated the Trade Center and knew how to get out. We put in battery pack lighting so that the stairwells would never be dark again. We painted the steps with fluorescent orange. We put in new fire command stations in the sky lobbies of the buildings. In just 3 weeks, we reopened the Trade Center for business. It was ringed temporarily with concrete jersey barriers. You see them on the roadways. We eliminated and restricted parking and put in some new temporary security systems, the new safety fire protocols and other quick fixes, and some ingenious engineering. Actually, the chief engineer of the Port Authority, Frank, is here today with us. Gene Fasulo, who was the chief engineer then, has passed. Although altered, we started to return to a normal way of life. And that's what the governor told us that morning when we met. We must reestablish normalcy. We cannot let them affect the way we live, affect our democracy. But the stories told and the lessons learned in '93 and the changes made will always be attributed to the many thousands of lives that were saved on 9/11 as a result of those changes. Realize it took 4, 5, 6 hours to evacuate the Trade Center in '93. It took up to 8 hours to get people out of elevators. On 9/11, it took between 20 and 30 minutes for those below the strike zone of the plane to get out of the Trade Center. Sadly, those above perished. The lives saved by the '93 life safety protocol and changes are a gift of those who were killed on February 26th that they gave and continue to give to future generations. I am proud to have been the director of the Trade Center in '93 and to have led and managed, along with Stan and the other Port Authority executives, the recovery, rebuilding, and installation of the new safety protocols. To conclude, as we do each year, we are gathered to remember the lives that were taken far too soon. To lead the reading of the names, I am honored to introduce Michael Macco, Sabrina Knapp, Nicole and Stephen Roselli. Would you please come up?
John DiGiovanni, and Robert Kirkpatrick.
My grandfather, Stephen Snapper Knapp.
My father, William Macco.
And Wilfredo Mercado and Monica Rodriguez Smith and her unborn child.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Michael, Sabrina, Nicole, and any other family members who are here today to lead us in laying roses at the names of their loved ones. Once the families have placed their roses, I invite survivors of the 1993 bombing, first responders, and all guests who wish to do so to join us in making this same gesture of tribute, which marks the end of our commemorative program. Thank you.